Ron, welcome aboard to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. Sounds like a great show. I've listened to a lot of episodes. You have a lot of great guests.
Hey, I appreciate that. Did you by chance listen to the guy who implanted a chip under his skin and you can hack your phone by holding it and has like a magnet in his finger?
Yeah, it's like the Uro ring, right? Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, the crazy stuff. Well, welcome aboard to the show. We were talking a second ago about Claude Code and token burn. What is the good and the bad, Anagi? Tell us what you're doing and kind of what's been your experience here.
Well, first I want to, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And for those that don't know, I've been writing about and doing AI for decades. I know it sounds crazy, but since 1995, went to MIT. My undergrad advisory was Rodney Brooks, started iRobot and all that good stuff. And, that's when AI wasn't cool. There was a period of time when AI was like not the hot thing, and about a decade ago, started up an AI research advisory firm called Cognilytica, which was acquired by PMI a few years ago, and that's when we started the AI Today podcast, which was one of the top 2 or 3 podcasts, and that was part of the acquisition. And I just can't stop playing, just like most people. I can't stop playing with AI. The biggest thing that's changed, of course, was generative AI. Kind of came out of the woodwork, and now everybody's doing it. And I think it's addictive in many ways that you can, type in a couple of prompts, start your favorite coding tool. Next thing you know, you got something, whether it's code, whether it's art, whether it's images, whether it's music. I do all of that. But now I think we're getting we're getting addicted, right? And the supplier is starting to realize that there's not enough supply to go around and the prices are going up. And what you get for every token is getting down. And I write about that also for Forbes. I'm a Forbes article writer, contributor. I've been writing on AI. I do about 10 articles a month. And that was actually one of my topics recently. It's like, does it seem like you're getting less per token? And the answer is yes, you actually are getting less per token. So something technical, but there is something there to it.
So, they're trying to get us addicted, right? The old joke about how software uses drug dealer terminology to users, and
That's
um,
true.
that's been around for a while.
Right.
But let's start at the beginning. We're still seeing engineers and CTOs saying, "Hey, Claude Code and such, it just doesn't work. You can't use it. It's unreliable." We see these memes on LinkedIn where, with this train not going on the track but going inside and all that crap. What do you say to the people that are not on the bandwagon yet? What are the actual issues with, quote unquote vibe coding, and how do you get around them? What is the way that you can actually make it work?
There's a lot of funny memes. There's a really funny video about how this guy decided to go back to Quora and to Stack Overflow to say, look, I'm not going to use this AI vibe coding stuff. I'm going to go to Stack Overflow and I'm going to ask my questions there to real people and get real answers. And of course, what happens is it's crickets. And then all of a sudden it's the AI bots are answering in Stack Overflow. So it's like, you're not going to win on this. So I think we've sort of crossed the chasm, as it were. And we're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube. I'm like using every metaphor here. Like, it's just, at this point, AI is a tool that people are using. It's not a perfect tool. We shouldn't treat it like a perfect tool. It's not magic. It's a predictive tool. It's been trained on a lot of stuff and it can help us, but it's not the kind of thing you can just close your eyes and hit a button and things will work. But it is accelerating. The reason why Cloud is getting so much usage, and of course, Codex and all the other tools, and actually now a lot of the Olama tools, is because they provide real value and real benefit. I think sort of this happens all the time with AI. I've been seeing it since the 1990s that people like want to put all the sci-fi stuff on it, and they see a lot of movies and they think, oh, AI can, run itself and take over the world. And then they just give all the responsibility to the AI. They give none to themselves. And they're like, well, it doesn't work. And then they sort of try to take it back. But it's just a tool, and used properly, you can get great results. Used improperly, hey, I've got a miter saw in my, garage here. I could probably use it the right way, and I could probably use it the wrong way and end up with less fingers. But I'm not going to do that. So I don't know if that answered your question,
No,
but
I
yeah.
think that's a very fair approach. What have you heard from your guests and from your own experience? What is the difference between using it the right way and the wrong way? What are the things that you would say, no, don't do this? And here's some good practices for people getting started with, any kind of vibe coding platform.
Well, the best thing I've heard, and I think I'm trying to remember who told. I think it might have been like the CTO of Home Depot, of all places, actually said this, that AI is the great averager because
Mm.
it's been trained on all of this data. And so if you use the model in a way that it's been trained, it'll give you basically on average what is the general what if you could ask the internet a question and get an answer back from the internet, that's basically what you're getting from an LLM. If there are things that you can't do that are at least average, an AI system will at least get you up to average, maybe a little bit better, because it's going to give you the best of the average, right? It won't make you a rock star, it won't make you a superstar, and AI won't perform. Right now, you can generate art, but we can all tell. It's like we've all, I call it like it's like the Subway sandwich effect. It's like you could have any sandwich you want from Subway, but it'll taste like a Subway sandwich. I don't know what it is about their sandwiches, but they taste like Subway sandwiches. And it's the same thing with like AI generated stuff. You can smell AI generated, whether it's text or images. Now, interesting thing about code is that we haven't trained ourselves to recognize AI generated code as much, but it's going to look like that. Now, a great artist will, of course, outperform even the best model because the models are not trained for outliers. They're trained for generalities, which is what they do, generalization. So I would say for people who are trying to say like, look, I'm not a great marketer, I'm not a great salesperson, or I'm not a great coder, AI will get you to that set level of, well, at least I can make you an average or a slightly better than average salesperson, marketer, coder, whatever. I won't make you exceptional. And if you treat it that way, that's great. The mistakes that people make is when they look for exceptionality in the system, and also when they take their when they take the human out of the loop. That's when they get into trouble. The other thing that I'm starting to see more and more of now, especially that as tokens are getting more expensive, people are realizing that they're asking for repeatability. I asked this prompt to do it. It did a great job the first time, the second time, then the third time, it's went way off the rails. Like, what the hell happened? You end up screaming at the AI system. Didn't I tell you 10 times, blah, blah, blah. And that's because, as you know, AI systems, they're not deterministic. They don't do the same thing every single time. They're probabilistic. That's how probabilities work. It's like you play the roulette table. At some point, it's not going to land on red or black. It's going to land on green. And you're like, what the hell just happened? Well, it's a probability. So if you want, you need to treat AI systems as probabilistic systems, and you need to find deterministic systems, programs, rules, scripts that will do the same thing time after time. And if you're getting smarter now, what you're realizing is use AI to help build the deterministic system and then use the deterministic system over and over again. Like have the AI system write a script to do something and then run that script over and over. And if you want the AI system to operate, just have it change the script rather than having the AI system do this same thing over and over. Long-winded, but hopefully that helps.
I think that's very fair, and I think a key element of this, and we'll get a little less geeky in a second, is that you need to build in these feedback loops that verify that what it's supposed to do, it's actually doing. So if you create your test cases first, and then your code needs to be built against test cases, and you have to build it again and again until the code actually passes the test cases, that's a feedback loop that will just make it work, right? But I want to step away from this kind of geeky area of coding and go into, and I'm a big fan of Claude, and so
Mhm.
but there's other solutions from other companies that do similar stuff. But Claude has a thing called Claude Cowork. Now, to me, this is Claude code, but for the regular Joe. And what I've seen people do with this, and myself, it will actually drive your browser. And just an experiment that I showed a CEO of this company, I was like, hey, look, this is what you can do. It basically grabbed off a website the attendees for a conference, then went to LinkedIn 300, 500 times and found the LinkedIn for each and every one. Then it went to the LinkedIn, and basically, he described a bunch of 10 criterias to be like, what is his sales criteria? Like, who does he actually sell into? And of course, because it was his conference and it was more relevant, but even in the people at the conference wasn't exactly. So then it said, is it a fit or not? And then it had Claude reach out to them automatically, all through automating his browser. So now it's just working in parallel to him and doing all the stuff. It lit his imagination on fire, because like that was the work of a couple of people, right?
Right.
Right there. So he has a guy doing some of this, another doing some of this, but now he's like, hey, all this pre-work, now the guy could just pick up the phone and talk to the person, as opposed to doing all this work on the internet. On the one hand, I mean, I can hear and imagine business owners all over the world going, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
But on the other hand, and you can talk to this too, I imagine massive, 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 massive demand going down. Because if one person is 10 times productive, does that mean we need 10 times less people in the workforce? Or is there going to be some other magic coming around where we're suddenly going to be 10
Mm.
times more innovative? What does the future look like? How are you expecting this to explode?
Only the easy questions you're asking.
You're welcome.
Let's hear it. Well, there's so much wrapped into that. Well, first of all, on the whole co-work. For a while, there was this movement. A lot of people may not be familiar with this, but there was this movement called robotic process automation, which was this idea. It had nothing, really actually nothing to do with AI. It was the idea of you can automate your machine to do these repetitive tasks. And it was really for people like call center workers and data entry people that they had to open one tab and another tab and copy something from like an email or a spreadsheet and paste it. And basically the people were acting robotically. Like it's like a person was not even using their head. They're just like cut, paste. And they were making mistakes and it was slow and blah, blah, blah. And these tools came out like in the mid part of the last decade, in 2010s, 2015, 17, where they would just record your activity. You'd
Macros.
record, yeah,
Yep.
basically fancy macros. And then they said, "Ooh, this is robotic." I think they used the
Yeah.
wrong term because then people thought it was AI, but it wasn't AI. And then they added some AI and made it smarter. But basically, it was this. It's like co-work before co-work, and didn't even use tokens, and it was all that sort of stuff. But the same argument was like, "Hey, we don't need to pay all these people to do data entry. We have all these people offshored." And it did make a major dent in the what was called the business process outsourcing industry,
Yeah.
which is, you can imagine, India and the Philippines and Vietnam and all these places where low cost of labor. Like, why would you pay somebody in a high place to just type stuff in? So it did make actually a pretty big dent. Now what we're seeing here is the democratization of this. Now everybody has the
Yes.
power of RPA, and it actually will make a huge impact on the workforce. So the argument has always been like, well, this has been the case with technology all the time. In the 1950s and 60s, if you went to an office, you'd see a room full of secretaries with typewriters and filing cabinets, and that was all replaced with Microsoft Office. Basically, you didn't need any of that. Please send a memo. All of that was replaced. Did we have mass unemployment? We didn't, because new needs came about. The problem that a lot of people are talking about, economists mostly, is that AI is so broad reaching. It's not just one industry and one impact and one technology. It's all the industries all at once and all these things, that there may not be enough workforce capacity to take all that. And there are, political candidates out there who are arguing for things like now universal basic income, because they're like, we need to offset. It's actually interesting. Even Elon is talking about it, Elon Musk. But we won't get into that. The whole point is that this is actually macro factor, and I think nobody really knows, to be totally honest,
Yeah.
what the long term effects are.
You talked about one element of the problem where it's happening everywhere all at once, right? But the other element of this is we look at the microwave, from it being the size of a room and being military usage to every house in America and in the world, it took 20 years. AI has done that in basically 2 years. If you compare to the internet, right? The early days, DARPA project turned into internet, that took 10 years. This is happening on a timescale we've never seen before. And I think that's one of the scary things. So, the real answer is we don't know. Let me ask you this. You have kids, let me assume.
I do.
Um,
One is getting into SAT time. Actually, it's coming up right now.
what do you reckon? So SATs, that means university
Yes,
potentially is around the
he's starting
corner.
to get exactly thinking
Yeah.
of, which is interesting place to be. It's like, what are they going to go to college for?
Right.
Right?
I mean, so I was
Yeah.
talking to this lady. She works at a university, wanted me to come be a kind of on their board of advisors. Never mind. She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm sending my son to learn computer science." My response was, "No, don't do that. That's the
Yeah.
last thing he wants to study." But your son, is that correct?
Yeah.
Is soon going to university. What are you advising him? What should he study?
Well, he's still kind of in the sophomore junior. Yeah, so he's still got a couple years to go. But interestingly enough, he's very interested in computers and computer science and computer engineering. However, I think he has a very, well, in part because I'm telling him about all the stuff that's happening, is very healthy perspective, which is that there was like this big movement that everybody should be a coder. And like, maybe 10 years ago or whatever, it's like everybody needs to be a coder. And of course, now that's like not great advice. But the thing is like, we're like, well, what are we trying, like, what are we trying to do with technology in general? I think he's thinking much more holistically. It's like, well, the basics of computing to, you know, quantum to all these other movements. I think honestly, though, my biggest concern is I don't really know what the workforce itself is going to be like. And so I've been trying to provide advice like, look, treat college as like like an ends in and of itself. Like go to learn something. Don't just go as a means to an end. Like I'm going so I can get a job where, because I'm like, I couldn't even tell you. It's like, 10 years ago, people were like, go get a coding degree so you could work at Google, Microsoft, whatever. But
Right.
they're all laying everybody off. So now that's terrible advice.
That's right. I mean,
So
the horrifying thing is that we truly don't know. I mean, the only advice I can think to give my son is either be a physician or a plumber, because in the cascading effect
yeah.
of AI, those are probably the last two things to go.
Yeah, NVIDIA is like tell everybody to get into HVAC and be electricians because that's what they need.
I mean, at a certain level, we say there's some truth to every joke, and I think that's definitely true over here. So I think there's something to be said, wouldn't you agree, about not knowing where the future is going? And I think we've kind of agreed to that premise. What do you do? How do you carry yourself in the
Mm.
interim? Is it about working hard? Is it about studying? Is it about relationships? Is it about networks? How do we basically tell our children to prepare for a future which is completely unclear?
Yeah, and what do we tell ourselves too, right? It's like
Well,
telling the kids, it's like I was like, well, let's tell ourselves this. Well, you said a couple of really good things in there. Building relationships and building networks will never do you wrong. It's like, we are still a world of people and people still talk and work with people. As much as machines are doing things, it's still a world full of people. And it's the people who decide what things are important and what things are not important, what we should
yeah.
focus on, what we should not focus on. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. So like, when telling my son, it's like, do more activities, meet more people, spend your summers doing things like internships that you're interested in. It doesn't matter what the career, just like go and meet, discover new things. I wish when we were in school, it was actually a huge opportunity. It was like this chance that we had to spend our time learning things without any real pressure, to be totally honest. It was a great amount of freedom in that. And then of course we, get older, we graduate, we get a job, we get married, we have kids and all sort of stuff. And now we feel like we don't have that luxury to spend that time. But I'm thinking maybe that's what AI can give us, is just the luxury of being able to focus on the more important things that are out there. I don't really know. I can't tell you what the world will be at the end of it, but I think that's a great idea to be spending our
But I
time.
love I love your philosophy. You're saying like we don't know anyway, so just do something, enjoy it, and do it just really well. Just lean in and be awesome in your field, and you'll figure it out one way or another.
Yeah,
There is something really relaxing in that. I appreciate it. And just to circle back to your comments around interconnections and human connections, if you kind of look at that paradigm shift where AI is doing all the kind of busy work on finding these and connecting you, at the end of the day what that's really putting you in a position is you're spending more time connecting with people on meetings as opposed to looking for their contacts or whatever. So at the end of the day, it feels like those human skills are going to be more and more important in this new world. So
absolutely.
I think that's a very fair comment.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. You have a wonderful podcast, so I want you to tell us a little about it. What is it? What is it called? How do people find it? And I'm gonna, since I have a podcast too, you're on it right now. I don't mind when people ask me what my favorite episode what was. So I'm gonna ask you that same question. What was one of your favorite episodes
Well, of your podcast?
of your
Oh,
podcast?
my
Not not
podcast.
that, not that, not that.
Oh my god, I haven't listened to all of them. So, oh my god, so many are great. So let me talk about the exponential scale. So this is actually my second podcast
That's right.
series that I've done. The first one, as I mentioned, was this AI Today podcast. Started in 2017 when it was still data scientists, to be totally honest. We're like doing the AI and machine learning engineers. Started really wonky. Then all of a sudden it became, oh, AI is everywhere. That was acquired with the company acquisition. And it's actually still running. AI Today is like, I think on 600 episodes at this point. When we sold it, it was like 500 episodes. It was a
Nice.
lot. I feel your energy. By the way, side note, podcaster to podcaster, because I love podcasts. I love podcasters, which is why why I couldn't say no to Ari. Of course, I had to say yes to this podcast. That when we started, it was just audio. And the
Mm,
funny thing is, like, now podcast is audio and video. So when I started the second podcast, which is called Exponential Scale, that's what I'm working on right now. I'm like, now I got to do audio video editing, which is a lot more time intensive. Now I got to use more AI for that. That's a whole other story. But the Exponential Scale podcast is focused on the idea that people can now scale themselves and their organizations to a much greater degree without having to rely on raising a lot of money and hiring a lot of people. So it's basically this response to sort of what entrepreneurship has traditionally been, and especially in the last 20, 30 years, unicorn dreams, raising a lot of money, hiring big teams. I think that's starting to fray at the edges now. And so what I do is I look for, this is actually a challenge. I'm looking for those small teams that have scaled really big. It's easy to find big teams who have scaled big. It's easy to find small teams who are not scaling, but the small teams have scaled a lot. All of them are like my children. I love every single one of them. The one that sort of like has been the most interesting to me so far, I've only had 30 episodes in the latest podcast, 500 in the previous one, but 30 something in this one, is a company called Dato CMS. They're an Italian company who has this what's called a headless CMS, which is you can basically use a client, CLI or API, and you can create websites and all that sort of stuff. Interestingly enough, not AI. It's just scripting stuff, and it's just 13 people. They're doing $6.5 million in revenue, which is fantastic. Over $500,000 per engineer per person, and they have the most chill perspective on work because there's no pressure. So they're like, 30, 35 hours a week is what you should be working. And if you have to work more than that, then they're like, something is probably not right. We don't want to work more than 30 to 35 hours a week. Why should we ask anybody else to work more than 30 to 35 hours? Because they're so small, they have a personal relationship with all of their customers, which is
mhm.
great. And so, you can just email them. They're there. They don't have like layers of management. So, and then they talk. So, one of the interesting things we talked about is like, well, how do you give your employees incentives? Because that's usually
Mm.
one of the responses is like, well, if you're not venture backed, you're not going to become a unicorn. How can you retain people? They're like, we have this profit sharing plan, which was developed by a company called Balsamic, and they put that out there. And we also have this other plan, this interesting way of doing monthly planning. And they're like, there actually is this growing body of work that's out there. That's this other, it's like a different way of thinking. So this is, I might have mentioned prior to recording that I am working on another book. I'm like, well, let me collect all these things together. It's like not raising money, at least this way. It's raising money maybe a different way. It's growing through profits, of course, and bootstrapping, but it's growing through that sustainably. And it's a different way of hiring. It's a different way of giving incentives. So stay tuned for that later in the year.
There's something, I mean, something's going to fundamentally break. I mean, if we kind of look at the economics, then, one person can do the work of 10. And I'm seeing that firsthand. I
Yeah.
am one of those small companies that's scaling.
Ooh.
And, on the other hand, we're seeing the sales and marketing on the sales and marketing side. We just talked about the fact that with Claude Coworker and whatever come next, you
Yeah.
can do the work of 10 people. So this seems to be the future. Let me ask you this. For the aspiring entrepreneur who knows nothing about these things and is like, oh, really? I can be, I can build a $1 million business with just a handful of people or less. How do you get started at that? What's the best way to kind of think about this, get started beyond listening to your podcast? Where should people go? How should they think about it? And is there, maybe more importantly, do I need to be like a hardcore engineer to be able to do this? Or like, is there a certain skill set that I need? Or is this truly the democratization dream we've been waiting?
That's a great tee up. Thank you for asking.
Hey, there's a story arc here.
Yeah,
There's a story
exactly.
arc.
So, there aren't many communities of people who are in this sort of mode of thinking. So one of the things I built about 6 months ago is a community called Scalabrate, which is a membership community of people who are building businesses like this. The interesting thing is that most of the new builders are non-technicals
Yeah.
because, as you know, what it takes to build a business is not really technical know-how. It's know-how of the problem you're trying to solve, the domain. So somebody be like, well, I know this problem really well. I might not be a coder. But the funny thing is like, I see a lot of coders who build companies, but they don't know anything about sales. They don't know anything about marketing or finance. So the thing is that you have your area of expertise. That's what's usually called T-shaped skills. So you have an area that you're really deep on. But if you don't have any breadth, you're super narrow. You don't know whatever. So you have to build a little bit of knowledge in a bunch of places and a really deep knowledge. But the interesting thing is, if you collect people together, then all of a sudden you have some good breadth. Now, the old way to do it is you got to hire a salesperson, hire a marketing person, hire a finance person, but you don't have to do that anymore. As I mentioned, AI can at least give you the basic level of competence. And then I can actually go out and find other people in my network. Say, hey, you're a marketing person. Let me just contract you because you have a T-shaped skill. You're great at marketing. You're just not good at other stuff. And so the grand vision I have, this is a bit of a dream, is that I do think that if we can all get together and we can all build our little multi-million dollar business. First of all, there's nothing wrong with a multi-million dollar business.
Yep.
We build our multi-million and we join together and we each support each other. And like there's a hub, it's like an alliance. I think we can do much more together as a group than any of us could try to be like, well, I want to be the one unicorn and take over the whole industry. It's like, first of all, it's not good for me, but it's also not good for you either.
Yeah.
Being a unicorn ain't so hot. So, that's my vision. It's also very international because these sorts of companies, as I mentioned, there's companies in Italy, there's companies in Africa and in Europe, just everywhere, Asia, South America. And it's like we can build this, you know, we could do more together as a whole than we can individually. So that's the big dream. And maybe economically it'll have much bigger impact. I think, as you know, the economy has really gutted the middle class. And I think if we can give people more empowerment to build not just financially viable things, but sustainable things, then maybe we could shift. The weight has gone like this, right? Billionaires and trillionaires, and so we can
So
kind of
so
squeeze that a little bit. Yeah.
I'll push back just a little bit of that, and I'll say that if you look at, 500 years of history, every single class is better off than they were if you look 100 years back and 100 years back. So, I don't entirely agree with this idea of the bigger gap between the rich and the poor, because every single class is better off. That's easy to prove and show
Yeah, I
economically.
mean, yeah, the general level has gone up. The problem is that the weight has been pushed quite a bit. Like, there's been a lot of new wealth creation in the last, say, 20 years. It just hasn't, it's been overly emphasized into a
And
small group.
it's true what you're saying, but here's my point. Every class has been doing better. And if we look at those points in which each class has done better, like jump to that next level, it has never been, unfortunately, some kind of advocacy or nonprofit doing it. It's always been the introduction of some technology. So when we go back and we look at the printing press or the mobile type, we look at the internet, and AI, in my opinion, is that next innovation that is going to redistribute wealth in this incredible, amazing way. So I'm more on the optimism side when we come and talk about the wealth gap. I think it's getting better, and I think this is the next big opportunity for it to get better.
I actually completely agree with you. What I'm saying is that there can also be a movement component to it. That it shouldn't just like happen on its own. That maybe there's ways of. I'm totally with you. AI is a democratizer, if you will.
Perfect. So let me tell you this story. This was just yesterday. I do some pro bono work. I was talking with a firefighter, and I've been working with him for a couple months. I started off by just showing him and teaching him over a couple sessions, Lovable. And this is a few months later now, yesterday. He basically built a product to help firefighters like manage their PTSD, their stress, their insurance, getting help, etc. And now I basically gave him a 1 hour session on, hey, this is how you build a business plan, and I sent him to the TechStars toolkit. I don't know if you've ever come across that. Think about this: firefighter, plumber, now with AI is building a business.
Absolutely.
That is incredible. I mean, this is the dream
Fantastic.
that you're talking about, and this is the
Fantastic.
potential future. My question, and here's my fear. My fear is if we don't get on board with this sooner than later, we're going to have a horrific, downside with massive unemployment. So my question to you is this: how do we propagate this education of AI, building businesses, creating this positive future that you're talking about sooner than later?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is ironically doing more of what you did, which is that people need to. It's like talking only gets you so far. It's learning. It's kind of the doing and the sharing and the knowledge. I love this idea of hackathons and show and tells. Before I did Cognilytica, I ran this big demo event series called Tech Breakfast. I'm actually wearing it right there. Tech Breakfast, which was just a morning demo event. exactly what it sounds like and did it all over the country, and it was just show and tell. And there's like this power to show and tell. Even if not I'm not showing you something that's specifically for you, like all of a sudden like the light bulb goes like, well, wait a second. I know you're showing that for the dentist business, but hey, I can actually do that for me. And a lot of it comes down to like it's just those light bulb moments. Now, does that mean we need new forms of workforce education? That should come from some, organizational, could be governmental, could be non-governmental, could be univer I think so. When I think about the universities, they're actually struggling quite a bit right now. We're
Yeah.
going back to the conversation, struggling for many reasons. Some of it's self-inflicted because what we're happening here in the US, a whole other story, what we're doing with international students. But also a lot of them are struggling because of the cost of education has got so high and the job force is not there. Actually, a lot of schools are shutting down, has been the story. Well, what if universities could tap their resources for those who are already in the workforce, and we could somehow. There's been a lot of talk of reskilling and upskilling and all sorts of things, but it's to your point, which is that a lot of it comes just to lack of opportunity, lack of knowledge, lack of experience, lack of guidance. And if they can be self-empowered to create things, let's go and bringing it back to the Scalable vision here, and we can all band together, then yes, we can not just the whole, the tide raises all the boats, which is to your point, like tide raises all the boats, but it's that people can feel that they have control, agency over their future, and they can build something that will last, and that they won't be like, at the whims of some employer, or, that's really the big issue is that you can't really count on employment anymore. But
Yes.
there's a power to self-employment.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, and you touched upon a really important issue here. If we kind of look at, government as an operating system and it's got these different modules, I think each and every one of them almost needs to be reinvented to a certain degree, right? Department of Education, how are we doing education not just at the university level, but what should we be teaching our youngsters? That needs to be rethought, and the speed at which AI is kind of changing everything means we really need to get on our game or we're going to find ourselves losing to China and
Yeah.
such. So there's something that needs to change there for sure. Let me ask you this. If you could be God or king for the day, what would be the one or two laws that you would change in order to create a positive effect?
Quite a supposition there. If I could be well, if I could have influence on the laws, let me put it this way. I think the biggest thing that I would really think carefully about is really thinking about how we incentivize people to it's that the whole relationship between the employer and the employee. And I think we need to really think about it's not really a law thing, but it's really we need to think about how resources are applied because right now everything is so focused on the employer. Like we give tax incentives to companies to open up offices in places in hopes that it will do something for the economy. But could we just not use that money more directly? It's like, well, wait a second. Instead of giving it to the employer and the theory that they might hire people and then at some point that may end up economically, I could go more direct to the people who are going to get more direct benefit. I think it's scary for a lot of people because we don't have a lot of experience with that sort of direct economic environment here. But I think there's a lot to be said about investing in people and investing in communities and not being so focused on the employers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, in fairness, in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the mom and pops were the thing. They were the majority almost of the US
yeah,
economy. So, I mean, I would love to see your vision, bring back the mom and pops
absolutely.
and these single small family businesses or other. I think that is potentially one way that we kind of save the economy from this massive crash, maybe even before it actually happens. So I think
Right.
that's wonderful, and rethinking the laws and the incentives to support the resurgence of these mom and pops as opposed to these multinational trillion-dollar businesses. I think that's a wonderful
Yeah.
outcome. Believe it or not, we're out of time. We have only
Uh,
one question that we always ask every single guest, and that is this. If you had to think about the hardest time or biggest challenge that you've had in your life, whether it's 2 years ago or 20 years ago, What advice would you give yourself?
So first of all, fantastic. And yeah, we could be talking for another hour. You're only asking, as I said, you're only asking the easy questions. No, but the advice I would give myself is this idea that the best way to succeed is just to keep going. Just don't stop, don't give up. It's of course you hear the thing about grit, and you hear the thing about having patience and having all that sort of stuff. It's easy to get sort of lost in the moment, sort of think in the short term, but like nothing of consequence, like, happens easily. Everything, that matters takes time. And I think, the advice I give to myself is like, just if you believe in something, then stick with it. Keep believing in it. Don't lose the spark, and just focus on and everything. Things will it's just strange. Things just do come together at some point. If you're doing things the right way and you're not chasing the short-term vision, you will get to the end destination. So I have a long-term vision now. So I'm definitely going to stick with it. It's like, it's not going to take 1 year or even 2 years. It may take 10 years, but I do think this is the moment, and I'm really all in on it.
I appreciate it. There's something about this concept of it. It took me 10 years of failure to become an overnight success. I think a lot of people forget that that's really what it looks like. And you don't know you're a success until suddenly other people see it. Ron, thank you so much for joining the show. This has been an absolute delight. I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Thank you, Ari, for having, and I'm going to look forward to possibly having you on the show. Would love to hear you about your
Happy,
scaling
hap,
system.
happy to do it. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.